Well, good evening. Thanks so much for being here this evening. My name is David Sittenfeld. I'm the director of the Center for the Environment here at the museum. I use the pronouns he and him. I'm so excited to welcome you to this terrific subspace event featuring what I think will be a fascinating experience lying at the cultural intersection of our cultural heritage, art, equity, dance, and the future of our climate. I'll introduce the amazing producer who has made this evening possible in just a couple of minutes. But first I want to situate tonight's program in the context of what we're doing here at the Museum of Science on climate change for the year of 2024. As you might have heard me say, if you've been to a previous subspace event this year, we're dedicating this year at the Museum of Science to one of the most important science issues of our time, the year of the Earthshot. Throughout this year, we're exploring equitable and innovative solutions to the climate crisis, with a focus on the ways that humans are transforming the ways that we live, work, eat, and move to create a sustainable and better future. We have a short video to give you a sense of the ways that we're engaging folks and thinking together about these important issues across the museum's in-person, online, and school channels. And I think we're going to see that video right now. So that just gives you a sense to the focus that we put on solutions. And these solutions and transformations to the climate crisis are exciting, they're important, but too often they're framed as things just for experts and world leaders to think about. At the Museum of Science, we believe that a resilient, zero carbon, and equitable future will only be involved if everyone is involved in making that future a reality. And that the disproportionate impacts of climate change can only be equitably addressed if communities and decision makers share their perspective and their local knowledge with one another, so that all communities will be safer and will benefit from the innovations of a transformed, more resilient planet. I cannot think about an area where this is more the case than the focus of tonight's evening's event, which focus on the intersection of climate and culture. Science and technology can help make our communities more resilient to the impacts of climate change, but the very choices that we make to address it are intrinsically intertwined with our relationship to our nature and our cultural future. And all of us have a role in shaping and preserving that future together. We're excited that you'll be able to ask questions tonight as the fascinating discussion progresses. So to do that, you'll visit slido.com on your mobile device, and you'll enter the code Bailar, just as it appears on the screen behind me. And now, I'm delighted to introduce Ana Tinajero, the producer and curator for tonight's activities and a fantastic collaborator and friend for the museum, who will get our conversation going. Ana is an award-winning Afro-Latin dance artist and performing arts curator who loves engineering spaces for community connection and conversation through the arts. She's spread the salsa bug to over 30 countries, and she's the founder of Dance to Power, an online Afro-Latin dance academy. Through her social impact initiatives, Ana advocates for LGBTQ inclusivity and gender and racial equity and the arts. Ana's a graduate at MIT, and she's won a ton of awards, including being named the 2019 Cambridge Woman of the Year by YMCA, which is a big accomplishment. Please welcome Ana.
Hola, buenas noches. Thank you so much. I told David to truncate my bio, so like, no, shorten it up, but it's very kind. Thank you all so much for being here. I wanted to give a big thank you to the Museum of Science for hosting tonight's conversation and continually hosting us here at the Museum of Science for our Bailar editions. We get to host them twice a year here. We are also at a time when together we have a very hard time having conversations, and so it's particularly, for me, very moving to be able to have a panel discussion and discuss something that we don't always get to have in conversation when we're on the dance floor. So I was recently in Granada, Spain this year, and I was there in the earlier part of the year, and that time of the month, the timing of the month there was very hot. Everybody kept complaining that it was much hotter than it normally was, right, for that time of the year. And later on, I was in Mérida, Mexico, and I was there for the hottest month of the year, at the hottest month on record. And so at the same time as I was leaving there, we were having some of the hottest time here in Boston, right? So we're feeling this everywhere. And with these changing and really growing, warming climate and pattern changes that we're having, this has a large effect on our food consumption. It has a large effect on our homes, on our livelihoods, and with that comes a lot of migration. What migration does is it also causes a lot of social instability and inequality. And so we're at a time when we need to find ways where we can build more collective action and more social connection so that we can start really having conversations together and mitigating a lot of what's happening, and hopefully at some point starting to reverse some of that course. So it's really beautiful to be able to be here today to dance together and get to have this conversation with some of the leaders here in Boston that are really working in the arts and dance environment for us. So I have the extreme honor to be able to present them to you. I want to first start out with our facilitator. And I want to mention that Cristela Guerra is an award-winning arts and culture reporter at WBUR in Boston, a queer Panamanian journalist of color, and a moderator who facilitates and leads conversations around race, identity, and equity. She's one of 24 journalists from around the world selected for the 2024 class of the Nieman Foundation for Journalism at Harvard University. With great pleasure, thank you so much. Please welcome to the stage, Cristela Guerra. As Cristela says, she goes, I finished it. She finished, that's right. I also want to thank our next panelist. Marissa Molinar is a contemporary dancer, an art administrative art activist, and a founder and director of the Midday Movement series, a grassroots initiative cultivating a new generation of dance leaders. She holds a bachelor's in environmental science from Brown University with a focus in urban conservation, and she holds a certificate in contemporary dance from the professional training program at Gibney Dance in New York. Please welcome to the stage, Marissa Molinar. Oh, my fellow Mexican. And I would like to also welcome to the stage Ashton Lights. Ashton is one of Boston's most renowned veteran freestyle dance specialists with training in many different cultural and concert dance forms, over 15 plus years of intensive experience, including crump, popping, locking, house, hip-hop, ballet, tap, jazz, modern, Afro-Haitian, and more. Well-traveled in the underground hip-hop competition circuit, he currently runs a range of community-based dance and creative entrepreneurship development programs, events, and festivals through his organization, Stiggity Stackz Worldwide. Please welcome to the stage, Ashton Lights. And just a little key thing too, for those of us that are here tonight, an extra little thing. There is also a dance choreography AI exhibit here in the corner that Ashton was a part of, if you'd like to check out during the night, right behind this wall before you hit downstairs. And if you're watching us virtually, come visit in person. You gotta partake with it. And Marissa is also in it. Marissa is also in it. And Lady, who is our host for the night, is also in it. Oh my God. All right, thank you so much all for coming out. Take it away, Cristela.
How's everybody doing? So, important questions. Can you hear me okay? Clearly? Yes? Will you do me a favor and do like a brief breathing exercise with me? If you can, close your eyes, if you're comfortable. Take a deep breath in. And a deep breath out. One more deep breath in. And a deep breath out. I want you to imagine a place outdoors that you love. I want you to picture the trees, feel the wind. Is it mountain or ocean? Can you feel the grass? Can you hear the leaves? Hold that space. Imagine yourself there. And I guess I just wonder, is nature dancing? Do you see it? A bay is a noun only if water is dead. When bay is a noun, it is defined by humans, trapped between its shores and contained by the word. But the verb, wikwegama, to be a bay, releases the water from bondage and lets it live. To be a bay holds the wonder that, for this moment, the living water has decided to shelter itself between these shores, conversing with cedar roots and flocks of baby mergansers, because it could do otherwise, become a stream or an ocean or a waterfall. And there are verbs for that too. To be a hill, to be a sandy beach, to be a Saturday, all are possible verbs in a world where everything is alive. You can open your eyes. So this is where I want to start. I want to start and consider how movement is just a part of what we experience every day outside, whether we realize it or not. And we have practiced this conversation a few times. And I really never write down questions, and this is not because I'm a pro, it's because generally I don't really know what's gonna be said when we're up here. And we've never done it in this space to have like the earth behind us. So that feels really big. But when you all consider how movement and your environment mingle, like literally dance together, what does it bring to mind?
I guess I can go ahead and start. So at this point in my life, I would mostly consider myself to be a contemporary dancer, which derives from modern dance and some ballet influence also. But I started out as a Mexican folkloric dancer and also an Aztec dance. And later on also studied classical Indian dance style called Bharatanatyam. And from those early learnings, one of the things that comes to mind is just how infused different dance styles are by the environment that's around them, and so then the culture that's born out of them. And so for me, the movement that comes from a people and that comes from our bodies is so intertwined with the earth that's around us, how water flows around us, how big is the sky around us, the temperature, the seasons, especially when it comes to the histories of prayer and celebration. So when I think of movement and earth intermingling, I think of it as it just inextricable, because at the end of the day, humans are absolutely creatures of nature.
Thank you, Marissa.
I guess I'll follow up on what Marissa was saying, and it makes me think about summertime, at my grandmother's house, before all of the dance training, the krump, the hip hop, the ballet. Dance was more of a cultural experience, something that just took place in the household, and there was always music, even from the point where we'd be waking up in the morning, and my grandmother got up before all of us, so she was cooking in the kitchen, and there was music playing, and I would come out of the room, and she'll be in the kitchen. She'll be like, "Come on, baby, come on and dance." And I get up on her toes, dance on her feet, you know what I mean? And my great-grandmother would be in the backyard, like gardening. And I see all these points of like synergy and connection with my family, with my community. And it's always facilitated through some type of movement that's connected to the music. So it's just like, it brings me back to my childhood, and just observing the world from those eyes, the discovering eyes of like, man, we're really here, like we're really out here. Yeah.
I want to remind folks that I want this to be a conversation between us, but I know that you all have things to say, and I want to bring you in immediately. So send us a question, send us a comment. I'm actually probably going to ask you what the place was that you thought about. Share that with us, because I think channeling those spaces, even though we're indoors, at a time like this, what Anna mentioned, at a time where the environment feels so precious and it feels so fragile all at once. So ask us questions, use hashtag Bailar. And I'm a bad journalist because I didn't attribute that quote. It's from Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants by Robin Wall Kimmerer. There's anecdotes that y'all told me that I really, really liked, and I wonder if you'd share it. There's the one about Kai that you mentioned. Could we get into that?
Yeah, so It Starts in the Park is a outdoor program initiative that's in collaboration with the Design Studio for Social Intervention. And the whole premise is about reimagining our community, and what would our communities look like? How would it shift our communities if we created space for dance like we do have basketball courts, football fields, etc. So even before this collaboration, I come from hip hop dance, and a lot of the times it's referred to as street dance because of where it takes place. A lot of my peers, we were self-taught, and we didn't have studios that we went to in the beginning, or before we even got into the community centers, we would just be outdoors and parking lots and parks, finding our way. So this is it's one way of us revisiting that aspect of what we do. But we have this program every summer, and we were at Mary Hannon Park, and what we do is activate the space. So we build out a big dance floor, we put the sound system, we bring in a caterer, local caterer. We had a Mr. Food come through. He's also an OG dancer. We have some game activities, and then we host free classes for the community. And the first time that we set up, we were in, so this is Dudley Street, so this is very active, right? There's a lot of kids outside. and we like took over the basketball court, and they was looking at us like, yo, like, we trying to ball up, like, what's going on? Right? And they were kind of like, what is this? Like, what are y'all doing? And then there was a lot of questions, and then when the food got there, they were like, can we have some food? Like, yeah, y'all get some food, it's free. Then they was cool, and they was like, oh, word, they got their plate, they was chilling. And then we started playing music, and we was inviting everybody to dance, and they was kind of like playing the sideline, like, I don't know, like, listen, I don't know y'all. And eventually one of the kids came up, and he was like, man, like, can you play like some like this specific type of music? And I was like, I think I got a couple beats, So I put the music on, and the next thing you know, like all the kids, I'm talking like from age 2, like literally like doing this dance, right? And I'm like, I don't even know how you have the coordination to do it yet. Like, you could barely walk, and you doing this dance. But all the kids in the park started dancing, and this kid Kai had like these just incredible moves, just the charisma, like he was really in it. You could tell like all the kids looked up to him. So I asked Kai, I'm like, yo, like, can you teach me like some of those moves? And he was like, I mean, you could tell he's like, I ain't never really taught before, I just do it, you know what I mean? I was like, just take me through it. So I was like guiding him and teaching me. And afterwards I was like, do you wanna like teach a workshop? And he was like, I was like, for money, I'm gonna pay you. He was like, how much? You see the eyebrow go up, he was like, So, I told him I'll pay him some money to teach the workshop, and he was like, yeah, I'll do it for some money. Like, so, the next series comes around, and they come to the park every time. They're in the park all the time. And I'm like, all right, Kai, like, it's your turn. We have all these dancers out there, like all these people. And he was a little nervous at first. I'm like, yo, just take me through it. Take us through it like the way you took me through it. And so I started playing the music, and I turned it down a little bit, and he started explaining it. And next thing you know, like, everyone's following his lead. And I'm looking at the way, more specifically at the way how his friends are looking at him. And they're like, dang, our friend is really out here like teaching this dance workshop. And you could kind of see his confidence like growing in that moment. Like, he was falling into this position of leadership, and he was starting to wear it in his posture. And afterwards he was like, you got that money? I was like, yeah, I got you. And then all the kids was like when, like, is this like when y'all gonna be back? And just the smile, I just remember the smile on his face. Like, Kai like taught his first workshop in the park, like, and that's something that, like, I didn't really like have that experience growing up. I had like the cultural experience. Like, I was at every, carnival, every Caribbean festival, every cookout, every party. But like, to be able to bring it to that level where like he was able to have this experience, like, it definitely touched my heart. It touched our team's heart. Like, we was just like, glaring at this young king, just like really out here doing it. And I was like maybe like a year and a half ago, 2 years. Kai's a little older now. He came back to the park this summer. He was a little taller. We were like, yo. It's just a beautiful thing.
Marissa, would you speak to what you noticed when you started teaching outside during COVID? And like the way that impacted every aspect of, I think, your classes at that time? Yeah.
So I am the director of an organization called Midday Movement Series, which is a grassroots dance initiative where we're training a new generation of dance teachers, basically in their leadership. So we focus a lot on teaching, and especially with contemporary dance. So before COVID, all of our classes were typically in dance studios, so very ballet kind of aesthetic, like a little bit more austere. But then the lockdown happened and all of the studios shut down. So in my community, we're all a little bit on the younger side, and folks were just like hungry to keep dancing. People were still very much craving like being in community, being together. So we were like, well, outside is still a place that's open, so why don't we do that? So in the dead of summer of 2020, we started hosting all of our classes outdoors. So, doing floor work, doing grombatmas and leaps and all kinds of stuff, turns and craziness, and just trying it out, seeing how it felt on grass. And it was honestly life-changing for me because, again, coming from Aztec dance, Mexican folkloric, these styles where it's so informed by, the landscape and who we are to each other and teaching each other who we are through movement. It started, to me, really shaping contemporary dance in that same kind of way of, oh, okay, like I understand this form now in a greater context. The other thing was like, because we were in a park, we had families passing by, we had folks out there with like their little ones, and especially the little ones had no problem coming right up to us and like trying to do all of the same things that we were doing, so it really broke down this perceived barrier that, especially concert dance that we call it, like dance that we typically think of on stages. There's sometimes the idea that concert dance is meant to be separate from the people and separate from everyday life. And that for me was just a very clear moment of saying like, my purpose feels very much like putting this concert dance form back into the realm of the people. So what if we just like kind of reclaim it as being an art form of everyone? So that honestly means that we need to change the way that we're training. The other thing that was interesting is that because so many of our class takers are themselves either advanced contemporary dancers or contemporary professionals, they have very little experience being outside with their dance forms. So sometimes they were getting distracted, not even just by people watching them or like, sirens going by, which they did find those distracting, but sometimes people were saying like, I just find the leaves to be really loud. Like, is there anything that we can do about that? And we're like, no, because it's trees. Like, that's what trees do. So, it was funny, but at the same time, I was like, in this culture, there's such a division between like, for ourselves, thinking about the earth as our actual home and that like we're connected to just everything around us. So if we're so disconnected from nature that we can't even stand the sound of leaves in the wind as we're training, to me, I'm like, okay, we need to change some things about what are we training for when we say that we're training for contemporary dance. And to me, it's to be in the contemporary moment, which includes this moment of not only climate change and climate crisis, but honestly like climate reconnection and earth reconnection.
What I'm noticing are the trends or the commonalities here are lineage, right? Like you're passing on cultural, not just like cultural importance, but you're making these like memories with people in a moment to make them feel grounded and rooted both to themselves and to the earth. Kai has something now that he didn't have prior to that. And with your students, for them to even acknowledge the fact that they heard the leaves when we so frequently ignore, like the sounds of our lived environment, right? We don't really consider, like we hear ambulances. I live in Lynn, I hear reggaeton, right? Like, which honestly is lit all the time. But like, what is it when you are living or walking by the sea? Do you hear beats in the waves? I don't mean to get woo-woo about it. I just think if we're thinking dance and movement, the earth is already doing it. I'm wondering, you said something really interesting to me around the issue that people talk so much about climate change, but there's also just naturally what we've done before this crisis, before we even arrived at the present moment of emergency. Would you speak a bit to that? And your observations around like these neighborhoods and how they're impacted?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, just full disclosure, I am not currently an environmental scientist, so I'm coming from my background from my undergraduate degree,
Yeah.
but I did get my focus in urban conservation and environmental justice. And one of the things about environmental justice is that we've already known for so long that marginalized communities, and especially communities of color, have already been impacted by environmental degradation. So when you think of things like airborne toxins, when you think of things like street level lead poisoning from building and road erosion, you know, that has already been so present for decades and decades. So the kind of, and again, these marginalized communities have already borne the greatest burden of that impact. You know, looking at public health, looking at just generational issues that can be passed on, looking at the built environment as a continuing source of sickness.
Yeah.
So that is now being compounded upon with the changes that we're seeing with climate crisis, because the other thing that you see is when you take into consideration things like topography. So like what, you know, our folks in marginalized communities at like below sea level, because we know that those are the areas that are more likely to be flooded. Are they in places where the bedrock is not as stable, because we already know that those are the places that are going to need to be rebuilt and they're not going to last as long, right? All of these are already things that these communities have been impacted by. So it's we need to think about the climate crisis in conjunction with the environmental injustices that have already been present, actually not even for decades, I would argue for centuries.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, the level of violence, yeah. I'm distracted because y'all are so good. Like, what they've sent us is so beautiful, and I'm not used to, like, you're just so cute. So it's like we're talking about, like, you know, the world is crashing around us, and then someone's like, my place, tall marsh grass dancing in the wind in the autumn. The place I thought about was the beach. I imagine myself beachside in Quisqueya, aka República Dominicana, with the palm trees dancing in the wind, waves crashing on the shore, birds flying all around, and the sun beaming down on me, and all the life around me. You know, and then that feels like we still have that, right?
Yeah.
Despite the level of damage and violence that colonization and imperialism does to the land just naturally. Mm-hmm. Would you speak to what you're encountering in the summers when you're trying to have classes with this heat?
Yeah, so this summer, we were 0 for 3, which means that in between the heat waves, every weekend there were these spot thunderstorms that just kept raining down on our parades. So we weren't even able to activate It Starts in the Park outdoors. We had to take it indoors. When we were setting up, there were a couple of times that we were setting up, it was just like we had to try to take all of these extra measures to like move around the heat, and you know, it just impacted, like, you know, who's gonna come out and try to dance in like 90 degree, 98 humidity, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like going crazy. So this summer was definitely the most difficult to organize, and I wasn't alone in that. There was a lot of events. I even organized for BAMS Fest one of the days. BAMS Fest was incredible. It was beautiful. Yeah. One of the days it rained. You know, the other day it was like really hot. You know, so it was just like we've just been dealing with having to navigate, you know, all of this change. And the past like 2 years, I was fairly lucky to the point where, like, you know, in my planning, I didn't even really consider. But after, you know, and another aspect is like what we have to do in order to even program in public open space. So like after fighting through the permit process and just like, you know, constant days of going back and forth. You gotta go to the police department, you gotta go to ISD, you gotta go to, and then we finally make it to the day and it's like, you know, womp womp.
Yeah, straight up.
So it was tough, but you know, we like you said, we deal with it, you know what I'm saying? We make it through, we still put on, and we figure out how to move around it. Yeah.
I have a question from Dominic. What new styles of dance do the panelists think might evolve in response to climate change? So he's like asking you to choreograph the chaos.
Choreograph to chaos. Wow. When I think about, maybe this is not even climate change related, but I just want to give you the first thing that came to mind. I have some peers that are from Gaza, and you know, we know what's happening right now in Palestine, and to witness these dancers, like these very courageous, these very like selfless, like people, like they're still organizing spaces for community to come together and dance, and they're sending us videos all the time, and they're dancing on the rubble. Like we're talking about like dancing in heat and dancing, and it just made me think about that and how that is shifting how I'm even thinking about what this dance, like being outside in public open space even means for me. So I do think that there will be, because dance is so adaptive, like each dance style comes from, the dance style tells the story of the community. My bass style is crump. Crump is from LA. The postures in the dance come from the people that live specifically in South Central. I also practice popping or boogaloo, and that dance is based in Oakland, and that dance reflects the people, what they were going through in that time period when it was created, the way they dressed, the mannerisms, the gestures. So I have no doubt in my mind that like the dance is gonna shift and move with the way that we're all dealing with this.
Thank you. How about you?
I think for me, it's less about the style per se and more about the importance of dance in our culture, especially because I think of dance as really teaching us the skill sets that we're going to need for the kind of activism and community building and community connection that is so necessary really always, but especially in these coming times. So for example, again, for myself, and my parents are also former activists, so I definitely come from this whole mindset of like, you know, not only is dance a tool of activism, but basically like to be alive is to be an activist. Oh, yeah. So,
yep.
So one of the things, exactly, so one of the things that I really value in contemporary dance is the way in which I really feel connected to myself, and I think that dance in general teaches us how to find a home within ourselves, which is so important if we're going to feel a sense of home in the larger world and with other people. It also teaches us what genuine connection is actually like, right? So there's the way of being very superficial with our connection, of being like, I got you, you know, versus being like, I got you. Right? And like you could even just feel the difference of the touch. Hopefully it looks different too. So it's that idea of when there's a certain physicality that dance teaches us of the authenticity of connection that you can't explain. Yeah. And that lack of being able to explain it is important, right? And it's obviously not just in dance. There are so many art forms in which this is true, but because dance is so often so interconnected with socialization and interconnection, I really get excited about the power that we can really have as dance artists in shaping the readiness of our culture for what's to come.
We should sit with that. Yeah. Sit with that for a second. I'm going to follow that with a question that feels related from the audience. This is really good. Do you think your dance preferences are determined by your place and culture of birth? Or do you think as you are exposed to different cultures and trained in different styles, your preferences are as a combined result of nature, nurture, and just being loved and encouraged along the way? I'm going to start with you. Can you repeat the question? Yeah. I think the question is there a dance that you're born into, or is there a dance that you find that feels like your own skin? You know, like, is the dance of your home the dance that you find most, like, fullness in? Or have you found that in other dances?
That is such a good question.
It's really solid.
It's a really good question. I think for me, it's almost a difference between like feeling your different sense of self with family versus
totally
like with yourself versus like with loved ones, right? That like they're all you, but it's just a different side of you. So like for myself, I mean, if you turn on a ranchera or like any kind of mariachi music, there is a certain part of me that is going to come out that is just not present, you know, unless I hear that music. And obviously, like, the dance comes right out immediately as well. I think that in my own style, and even in the way that I perform and interpret the contemporary styles that I do, that to me definitely still feels present. I feel like I've had to fight for and insist on that presence,
totally,
as opposed to it just like feeling like a welcome connection. But because it feels so important to me, it's there just is no other possibility. So yeah, I think it's my tastes are very broad, you know, and obviously like I see Stackz doing his thing and I'm like, oh man, you know, like I wish that these are things that I can do. So there are certain styles that I have so much love and admiration and appreciation for that are just do not desire to necessarily live in my body. But of the ones that do, that is also like an ever-changing sort of kaleidoscope, but that I think I absolutely feel my own through lines with.
Yeah. We're getting really close. I just want to read these two reflections. This is beautiful. I thought of a breezy evening at the beach, waves literally with a va-y-ven, Spanish for nature's two-step. The ocean's roaring, yet soothing wave symphonies. The palm trees swaying, the wind traversing all leaves with an orchestra of rainbow emulating sky. Okay, poet. Damn. Jeez. And this is interesting. This is important right now. I'm thinking about the people in Venezuela right now, and my heart hurts for them. What can we do from here in Boston to help our people in our native countries empower them and bring them hope using dance and science? And I think that relates to these other questions. How do you think dancing is potentially connecting people of different backgrounds, cultures, and origins to tackle the climate crisis? Yeah, these are the main questions. Like, you know, how can dance teach us to be sensitive to change? You know? It kind of brings everything we were talking about together. It's this idea of like there are migrants showing up on the daily who are sleeping on the streets right now. There are people who need homes. There are people who need dance probably to be an escape from their current circumstances, you know, and y'all are working with all kinds of folks. What does this stuff bring up for you?
I'm kind of like trying to tie all of that together in my brain, even from the last question. But I think dance amplifies our connection. What I've seen in my experience, especially with like nature versus nurture, I can speak to my testimony that like, you know, the dance that we do it lives in a cycle. And I've been able to trace my roots as I grow more experience and wisdom in the craft. It always circles back to the beginning. I've learned all of these different dance applications and techniques and forms and processes. And then it always circles back to that first dance I ever learned, which was a line dance. You know, it taught me how to cross my feet, right? And I was stumbling at first because they were like, you know, keep up, right? But the ball changed, the weight distribution, it had everything, it had all the information I needed to conquer all of these other dance forms that I learned. And to speak to the nurture of it, like, I think when we talk about that connection, like, I got inspired to lean into dance by the movie Rise. I don't know if, raise your hand if you've seen it. Got a couple of people in here. If you haven't, definitely check it out. I really feel like the dance chose me. And I wasn't alone in that. Like, I have friends in Hong Kong. I have friends in Denmark. I have friends in Senegal that have that exact same story. Like, the dance just kind of like activated something in us, like a spiritual DNA, where we were able to see like, oh, this is the dance that I want to do, and nothing was gonna stop us from doing that. We gathered wherever we needed to gather. Early days of Crump, it was hard because, you know, Crump is not easy on the eyes, you know, like especially in 2005, like people were like, what are y'all doing? I ain't gonna lie, you know what I mean? So, like moving through that, right? And then moving into where we are now, where I've watched dance bring thousands of people from different cultures, from different backgrounds, different interests, different levels of education, different to one room to celebrate. And then what happens after the dance is that we eat together, we talk, we fellowship, and we think about how we could continue this energy and really like build our own community and help in the ways that our communities need help. So like, dance can definitely activate. It has in my life. I'm pretty sure it has in your life. It's just a part of our testimony and why, like, even though it's very hard, it's not easy, I would say, to maintain and sustain within the craft, especially, you know, in our economy. But it's one of the major reasons why I'm like 10 toes down. Like, this is what we're doing, you know. It's that change.
Thank you. Final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just piggyback off of what Stackz said. So in Midday, we use ecological principles that actually you reminded me of with your testimony. One is the idea of there's an ecological principle called keystone species, which is the idea of one species having a disproportionate impact on its environment just by doing what it does. So we talk about elephants a lot, like really impacting its environment just by doing its elephant thing. And you know, we talk about our teachers being keystone artists in the community, you know, that they're impacting so much more than just the dancers taking their classes. They're impacting audiences, they're impacting funders, they're impacting collaborators, you know, costume designers, graphic designers, lighting designers, et cetera. And I think, you know, Stackz is such a beautiful example of like one person can literally change an entire ecosystem. So please, I think that dance really teaches you that, because it teaches you to literally train in your own power. So, you know, I think that you're a very good example of the kind of resonant impact that can happen with one person living in their alignment of that power. Something else is that we talk a lot about ecological time in midday movement. So, you know, there's always the craving of like, things have to happen so fast and da-da-da. And the thing in nature that we find is that what look like destructive acts can happen very quickly, right? So if you think of like an avalanche or a volcanic eruption or something like that, the secret is it actually builds very long over time. So like you have to watch out for those signs too. But it looks like a very quick instance versus the growth is always going to look very slow. So we have to have the stamina and the stomach for the slow growth. And something else that's really beautiful I want to point out with the work that Stackz does is that he so explicitly looks to the history of the street dance community very explicitly here in Boston to talk about where we've come from, right? And so like what he's building towards. So that ecological timeline, I think that dance is definitely a way to process and continue that if we especially look to our elders and our ancestors. And then I think the final thing is that I think that dance really has the power to teach those who have been inactive to activate, right? Of like, what does your active body and your activation actually feel like, right? Because we need a lot more hands on deck and we need a lot more feet on the ground than have been here. So like, can we actually get everybody to have the craving to get moving?
I think there's no better place to end. I mean, I think what you're saying is folks need to get outside and dance. They need to move together. We need to get moving on a lot of fronts. And honestly, often what communities do when they're marginalized, when they're oppressed, they sing, they dance, they come together for liberation. And so dance in turn becomes a liberatory movement naturally. Yeah. I like this. I pictured myself at Castle Island by our tree with the Sullivan's hot dog in one hand and my dog's leash in the other. I'm not going to end it on this note, but David, this is a good point. To underscore the speaker's points about heat and health, Boston's gone from a mean of 11 days per year over 90 degrees to 24 to 26, such days in recent years. Research by the museum found temperature disparities of 15 degrees across neighborhoods, with marginalized communities bearing the worst impacts because they don't have trees. Because there are no trees, there is no shade, it is very hot. And yet we're still dancing, and we're still moving. I should have ended 5 minutes ago, but this is fascinating. I'm so happy we had this conversation. Thank you. Please stay with us. Please dance with us. There's a bunch of performances downstairs. You should really stick around for it. And thank you for joining us today.